The stories never stop when it comes to the world of the NBA. It's a non-stop, all-action sport where something is always happening, and at times, it can actually be quite difficult to keep up with it all. The NBA is the most elite competition that basketball has to offer, and it's one of the top leagues in all of sports as a whole. So it comes as no great surprise that news outlets are quick to cover basically anything that happens to anyone, even slightly linked with the competition. In today's video, we're going to save you the hassle of scrolling through endless articles by listing the hottest recent stories, so don't go anywhere. Just a reminder about our new giveaway. We're giving away a PS5 with a copy of NBA 2K22 and Madden 22. All you have to do is watch the full video, leave a like, comment the keyword hidden in the video, and make sure you're subscribed. It's that simple. First up, Ben Simmons' injury update. It was perhaps one of the biggest and most dramatic stories that the NBA has seen in recent memory, the saga between Ben Simmons and the Philadelphia 76ers. Having been a star with the Philly outfit, winning multiple individual accolades, and becoming a consistent all-star, Simmons shocked everyone when he formally called times up on his stint with the 76ers and demanded to be traded away from Philly. Simmons, at the time, put much of this down to personal conflicts between himself and other members of the 76ers, including multiple teammates and even his coach. It was far from being a smooth, painless exit, with the 76ers hesitant to trade away one of their star players for anything less than a fair deal, leading to Simmons going on strike and refusing to play in games. By the time he finally got his trade, he missed over 50 games and racked up so many financial penalties that he became the most fined player in the history of the NBA. This is far from the sort of record-breaking that any player wants to achieve. In the closing hours of the most recent deadline day, this soap opera saga received a soap opera ending as Simmons was dramatically traded to the Brooklyn Nets, finally getting the trade from the 76ers that he had spent so long fighting for. Simmons has yet to actually play a game for the Nets since arriving, as having spent so long on the sidelines, he is far from being sharp enough to just step straight onto the court. For a bit, the Nets had hoped to have him back in time for what would have been an explosive debut game against his former team. This would have been a trip to Philly to play the 76ers on the 10th of March, but we now know for sure there's no chance of that happening. The most recent update comes to us from ESPN's Brian Windhorst, who broke the news that Simmons is currently considered week to week due to rampant back soreness that is keeping him on the sidelines. Windhorst went on to explain that this setback will ensure that Simmons doesn't play on the 10th, but that the hope is he'll be close to full fitness and ready to make his debut not long after that trip to Philly. While he won't be playing, we also know that Simmons is set to accompany his team for the game on the 10th and will be on the bench to watch. So there's little doubt that the 76ers crowd will be all too happy to give him a very vocal homecoming. Moving on, Westbrook fires back at critics. When Russell Westbrook was traded over to the LA Lakers in August 2021, few would have predicted that his relationship with the fans would have broken down as much as it has, and nobody would have foreseen the fact that the Lakers are already reportedly looking to get rid of him. If anyone tells you they did predict that, they're lying. Anyways, yeah, it hasn't gone very well for Westbrook since moving to LA, and it all makes very little sense if we're being honest. Westbrook is a 9-time NBA All-Star, has been named MVP once in his career in the 2016-17 season, and holds multiple all-time NBA records, including his status as the NBA player with the most triple-doubles in the history of the league. He's an elite basketball player, which only makes his rather inconsistent performances all the more bizarre. In his defense, there have been good moments, such as the game against the Charlotte Hornets in January of this year, where he scored 30 points in the second half, the most points scored by a Lakers player since Kobe Bryant's final game in 2016. Unfortunately, even this individual triumph is marred by the fact that LA lost that game, and for all the flashes of brilliance, the vast majority of his contribution has been disappointing, with many fans suggesting that he is to blame for the Lakers' poor season. The fact that they have gone from a championship season without Westbrook to struggling with him doesn't help matters at all. Some fans' frustration seemed to have crossed a line recently, however, as Westbrook's wife Nina took to Twitter to address the death threats and abuse she has received, presumably just for being married to Russell Westbrook. Russell himself addressed this, commenting that he stands 100% behind his wife and that he is sick of the constant abuse. "I don't mind criticism of missing and making shots," he said, but went on to suggest that his name is being shamed, and that is where it becomes an issue. The American claimed that he really understood the importance of this issue when his son's teacher told him how proud his son was to have the Westbrook name, and it was this information that made him decide to start taking his reputation seriously. This issue seems to have reached the point where Westbrook currently doesn't want to bring his children to games because of the verbal abuse they would hear launched at their father. Enos Freedom labels NBA hypocrites. I think we can all agree that in general, it is nice when a big sporting institution like the NBA takes a stand against human rights violations, yeah? Well, that seems like a pretty universal principle, and so when the NBA made made a statement about the ongoing Russian invasion of Ukraine, offering support to Ukraine and instituting pin badges to honor the Ukrainians fighting on their streets. Many were pleased. Enes Freedom, however, is different, though not because he's against the concept in itself. For those not entirely aware, Enes Freedom is a former Boston Celtics center who publicly spoke out against the treatment of Uyghurs in China, and upon doing so, found himself suddenly being dropped from the team. His team on the court grew increasingly limited before he was eventually traded to the Rockets, who instantly waived his contract, officially releasing him and leaving him as a free agent. For rather obvious reasons, Enes concluded that he was clearly being punished for speaking out against the Chinese government, with the NBA being concerned about its broadcasting and media revenue from what is one of the biggest markets on the globe. This is why when the NBA, having been so very passionate in their support of Ukraine, Enes has been unable to see this as anything other than hypocrisy, taking to Twitter and taking multiple shots at the organization as a result. Freedom starts his Twitter rant by recognizing that he does actually support the Ukraine pins being worn by the Boston Celtics, as he believes this sort of activism is overall a good thing, but he quickly points out that activism seems to only be allowed for certain causes. He asks why it's okay to speak up about the situation in Ukraine, but not in places like Syria or China. He then points out that when he wore shoes to bring awareness to the human rights violations in China, the Celtics demanded he stop or face a ban. Ultimately, Enes suggests that it all comes down to money, hinting that because there's not much profit from the Russian market, the NBA has changed its tune with regards to political statements being made by its athletes. And finally, Kyrie Irving masterclass seals Nets win. And to round off today's video, we absolutely must talk about Kyrie Irving's frankly ridiculous performance for the Brooklyn Nets as they put a stop to their losing streak by defeating the Charlotte Hornets. Although it was a good all-around performance from the Nets, it was the individual contribution of Irving that really caught headlines as he turned in an immaculate performance, scoring 50 points for his team, all while doing so in a fashion so sublime that it has broken analytics. He became the first player in NBA history to score 50 points in fewer than 20 field goal attempts, hitting 15 from 19 attempts on the floor to bag a conversion rate of 79%. He also contributed further by registering 6 assists on what was a statement night for both the Nets and more personally for Irving. It was only a few days before the triumph against the Hornets that the Nets were beaten by the Celtics, a game where Irving struggled amidst a relentless wave of Kyrie sucks chants from the opposition's fans. Many seem to have forgotten just how good Kyrie is due to the fact that he has been inconsistently available for the Nets. His refusal to get a COVID-19 vaccine has meant that he cannot actually play in any of the home games for his team, whose stadium requires for all athletes to be vaccinated. This is sure to be a continued issue for the Nets, as the performance against the Hornets has shown just how important an asset Kyrie can be when he's actually able to play. And that's everything. Thanks for watching.